Remember Stone Soup by Heather Forrest? Hungry travelers came to town and were very clever. They convinced all the people in the town to share food for Stone Soup. Here's another version of Stone Soup. This book is by Marcia Brown, and it was written a long time ago. What do you notice about the cover? In this version, 3 hungry soldiers are clever and want the people in the village to provide them with food. Let's see what happens. Three soldiers trudged down a road in a strange country. They were on their way home from the wars. Besides being tired, they were hungry. In fact, they had eaten nothing for 2 days. "How I would like a good dinner tonight," said the first, "and a bed to sleep in," said the second. "But all that is impossible," said the third. "We must march on." On they marched. Suddenly, ahead of them, they saw the lights of a village. "Maybe we'll find a bite to eat here," said the first. "And a loft to sleep in," said the second. "No harm in asking," said the third. Now the peasants of that place feared strangers. When they heard that 3 soldiers were coming down the road, they talked amongst themselves. "Here come 3 soldiers. Soldiers are always hungry, but we have little enough for ourselves." And they hurried to hide their food. They pushed sacks of barley under the hay in the lofts. They lowered buckets of milk down the wells. They spread old quilts over the carrot bins. They hid their cabbages and potatoes under the beds. They hung their meat in the cellars. They hid all they had to eat. Then they waited. Why do you think the peasants hid all of their food? The soldiers stopped at the first house of Paul and Francois. "Good evening to you," they said. "Could you spare a bit of food for 3 hungry soldiers?" "We have no food for ourselves for 3 days," said Paul. Francois made a sad face. "It has been a poor harvest." The 3 soldiers went on to the house of Albert and Louise. "Could you spare a bit of food? And have you some corner where we could sleep for the night?" "Oh, no," said Albert. "We gave all we could spare to soldiers who came before you." "Our beds are full," said Louise. At Vincent and Marie's, the answer was the same. It had been a poor harvest, and all the grain must be kept for seed. So it went all through the village. Not a peasant had any food to give away. They all had good reasons. One family had used all the grain for feed. Another had an old sick father to care for. All had too many mouths to feed. Do you think there really is no food to share? Why would these peasants say such a thing? The villagers stood in the street and sighed. They looked as hungry as they could. The 3 soldiers talked together. What do you think the soldiers are talking about? Then the first soldier called out, "Good people!" The peasants drew near. "We are 3 hungry soldiers in a strange land. We have asked you for food and you have no food. Well then, we'll have to make stone soup." The peasants stared. Stone soup? That would be something to know about. "First we'll need a large iron pot," the soldiers said. The peasants brought the largest pot they could find. How else to cook enough? "That's none too large," said the soldiers, "but it will do. And now water to fill it and a fire to heat it." It took many buckets of water to fill the pot. A fire was built on the village square, and the pot was set to boil. And now, if you please, 3 round, smooth stones. Those were easy enough to find. The peasants' eyes grew round as they watched the soldiers drop the stones into the pot. What did you notice about each thing the soldiers say they need something, like the pot, the water, and the stones? What did you notice each time when they said that they needed something? "Any soup needs salt and pepper," said the soldiers as they began to stir. Children ran to fetch salt and pepper. "Stones like these generally make good soup, but oh, if there were carrots it would be much better." It says that the children ran to fetch salt and pepper. What does it mean to fetch something? What do you think that word fetch means? "Why, I think I have a carrot or two," said Francois, and off she ran. She came back with her apron full of carrots from the bin beneath the red quilt. "If only we had a bit of beef and a few potatoes, the soup would be good enough for a rich man's table." The peasants thought that over. They remembered their potatoes and the sides of beef hanging in the cellars. They ran to fetch them. A rich man's soup and all that from stones? It seemed like magic. Do you think the soup is really being made by magic? "Ah," sighed the soldiers as they stirred the soup in the beef and potatoes. "If we only had a little barley and a cup of milk, this soup would be fit for the king himself." Indeed, he asked for just a soup when he last dined with us. The peasants looked at each other. The soldiers had entertained the king. Well, but no use asking for what you don't have, the soldiers sighed. The peasants brought their barley from the lofts. They brought their milk from the wells. The soldiers stirred the barley and milk into the steaming hot broth while the peasants stared. At last the soup was ready. "All of you shall taste," the soldiers said, "but first a table must be set." Great tables were placed in the square, and all around were lighted torches. Such a soup! How good it smelled! Truly fit for a king. But then the peasants asked themselves, would not such a soup require bread and a roast and cider? Soon a banquet was spread, and everyone sat down to eat. Never had there been such a feast. Never had the peasants tasted such soup. And fancy, made from stones. They ate and drank, and ate and drank, and after that they danced. They danced and sang far into the night. So the first soldier slept in the priest's house, the second soldier slept in the baker's house, and the third soldier slept in the mayor's house. In the morning, the whole village gathered in the square to give them a send-off. "Many thanks for what you have taught us," the peasants said to the soldiers. "We shall never go hungry now that we know how to make soup from stones." "Oh, it's all in knowing how," said the soldiers, and off they went down the road. How do you think sharing helped everyone, not just the soldiers? How do you feel about the trick the soldiers played on the peasants? I'd like you to record your answer on the Remind app and send it to me. Now I have a little something from yesterday's version of Stone Soup to read to you that I wanted to save for today. There's an author's note in here. It says, Stone Soup is a popular European folk tale that has been told and retold for centuries. In the French version, the travelers are cast as soldiers and the townspeople are fearful of being generous because of the ravages of war. In Sweden, the story features a tramp who teaches a stingy old woman generosity by using a nail to start a scrumptious nail broth. In the Russian version, an axe serves as the soup starter. Everywhere the tale is told, the plot ends with the optimistic realization that when each person makes a small contribution, the collective impact can be huge. This contemporary version of Stone Soup takes place in a village located anywhere that people learn about the pleasures of sharing. So this one was the newer version of Stone Soup, and this one that we read today was the French version from a long time ago. I hope you enjoyed those stories. Have a great weekend. Bye.